all day long, everything seemed to be different this certain day. I don't know, looks like there's times like that comes in life when people just begin to see things a little different than what they once seen them. This had been an unusual day. The weather even seemed strange. I was noticing, as far my first Bible I ever knew was grand old Mother Nature. You'll just follow that, you won't be too far off the road. Watching nature, how it works. It was that led me to God, knowing that there was a God. Watching nature. I was coming down the mountain, looking out upon the beautiful Lake Umbagog, which leads out into the Androscoggin River. I noticed the robins all seemed to be getting together and giving their little chirping songs. Once in a while you would hear the snort from the male deer and looked like if they were getting ready for something. It was coming winter and they were getting ready to yard. As I plowed on down through the underbrush to meet my friend where we'd parked a canoe, there was he was sitting on a log waiting. And I noticed out into the Lake Umbagog such a great swarm of ducks. I never seen so many hardly in my life. And Bert, my friend, said, "What do you make of that, Billy?" I said, "Well, they are getting ready to fly south." I said, "That's the reason that sun set this afternoon. Did you notice how before it peeped over the mountain, how that it looked so red? It's getting ready to snow, Bert, and some kind of a special instinct that God has put in animal life to make ready, to get ready, to move. Flying time comes." I said, "Did you notice the birds today and the robins and so forth? They're getting ready for their winter flight also. The deers are getting ready to yard because that there's coming a storm." And as we dipped our paddles into the lake and started down, I believe every duck all up and down the Androscoggin River had come into Lake Umbagog, getting ready for the flight. And all of the quacking, only as ducks can do, just carrying on. And Bert said, "What do you think they're talking about, Billy?" I said, "They're having a little time of fellowship before the flight." And then as this Indian friend of mine and I moved on down the river to our certain camp, and the moon began to get pale as we knew the storm was coming, and our paddles began to make a little ruffle in the water then as the waves began to rise. I thought on this, surely sometime before we take the flight, we'll have a time of fellowship when all churches can come together on one ground and all have a time of fellowship before we take the flight. And years passed. I was a local Baptist pastor at that time at Jeffersonville, and as years passed on, I come into this great full gospel businessman's fellowship. Then I began to notice that how that they would spend their money and go from place to place and meet across the nation, yes, and the world. And when they come together, they were no differences among them. They were not one saying, "I belong to this certain assembly and another a certain assembly." They all had things in common. So I thought that must have been what I was thinking of that night, of a fellowship, a getting together before the flight starts. Now I noticed them there in this great Pentecostal move. There did not seem to be any condemnation among them. You meet them in a hotel room, they'll throw their arms around one another right in the face of the celebrity or whatever it is, and hug each other and praise the Lord and cry a little while and shout a little while and just act like they do anywhere else. And I thought, you know, that's real. There's something about that. the women likewise. It just seemed to be a great fellowship. And I wonder what causes that, and why is it we all can't do that? Why is it all people, all human beings can't feel that way? No condemnation, just as free as you can be. I thought, well, why can't everyone be that way? Now, I believe we can, but there is, and the reason that we do that first is because that there's something in the human life that desires that, something that calls for it. Today on the plane coming from Louisville down here, it was taking me 2.5 hours of flying. It'd take me all day to make it, delayed planes. And maybe God had a hand in it. When I got on at Louisville, there was a young lady got on the plane and sat down by me, and she said, "Do you mind if I sit here?" I said, "Not at all." And as we went on, they were serving lunch on the plane. And I prayed, and she said, "Are you a minister?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And she said, "I am a believer too." And she told me of her certain denomination. I said, "That's nice." And I noticed we had a little package of cigarettes on the plane, and I watched to see what she'd do about it. So as soon as the dinner was over, she began undoing that package of cigarettes, and she fumbled one a little bit, and she stuck it towards her mouth, and she took it down again, and after a while she lit it up. She said, "You don't mind if I smoke?" I said, "You don't mind if I tell you I do?" I said, I do, because she said, "Why?" I said, "I can't understand why a nice little lady with the personality that you've got would have to do a thing like that." She said, "Oh, I get satisfaction out of it." I said, "That's only a substitutionary satisfaction. If you would just take what I tell you and would turn your life completely to God, there's something that you're missing, and you're trying to make cigarettes fill up that longing that's in your heart, give you a false satisfaction which will soon give you cancer or degrade your body, and you'll be gone." And I said, God made a person to thirst after Him. And then if they do not accept that, then the devil gives them a false conception of pleasure, and they try to satisfy it with the things of the world. She'd made about 2 little draws off the cigarette, and she said, "I'm 22 years old." She said, "My engaged boyfriend is 32. Said he told me I've been overseas for 3 months. He begged me to smoke no more." And she said, "This is the first time that I have smoked missing the plane." And she said, "Sir, I take this promise now." She put the cigarette out, got. Now, if there is a true fellowship, and God is love, and love demands a fellowship. Like the young couple, when the boy meets the girl, and he says to her, he thinks she's so pretty, and she's fond of him. They want to have fellowship, a real fellowship. But before they can have this fellowship, there has to be an agreement. Before they can enter into wedlock, there has to be an agreement for this certain fellowship. And it's based upon the truces of their pledges to each other, and then holy wedlock, and then we enter into a lifelong fellowship. But before we can enter into that fellowship, there has to be an agreement first. And when fellowship was broken between God and man, there had to be some sort of an agreement, some sort of an arrangement to restore again that lost fellowship. And God found the plan, and it was through the blood of an innocent victim that God restored man back to fellowship with Him again. There's been many substitutes tried. Adam tried it. We've tried to educate people to it. We've tried all different forms, but there's nothing that brings man back in Christ. It's the only appropriation God has, is the blood.